معكم سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، قال الله في محكم كتابه الكريم وقوله الحق: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. A second salawat in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib. A third with your loudest voices in honor of the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asri wal Zaman. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. On the 10th of the holy month of Ramadan, one of the greatest Marja of the Shia heritage was murdered alongside his grandchildren and his daughters and his son-in-laws and his entire family while fasting and preparing for the next day. This is a scholar that, whether you are a follower or not, proponent of the vision or not, connected in any metric or not, cannot deny was a very influential figure within the history of the religion of Islam, not just of Tashayyur. The implications of this have still yet to be understood. Indeed, it is not normal for us to hear of a Marja' deen whose blood was slain, of a scholar, not just a scholar, a Marja', with arguably the second most followed amount of muqallideen, to be slayed in cold blood. What are its implications? We have yet to see. This is not something small or little. The man that we're talking about today, Samahat Ayatollah al-Shaheed al-Sayyid Ali al-Khamenei, Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayh, is still not buried properly. And I'm not sure if many have understood that you don't need to be a muqallid of someone to understand that there was a crime against humanity leveled out. If it was anyone's home that had a daughter and granddaughter, son-in-law and children and daughter-in-law and barely surviving son, it would be an uproar. But because once again it's a Shi'i's blood, it may not be the most newsworthy thing. And the reality is millions of people broke down. This is a follower of Ahlul Bayt at the end of the day. But on top of that, this is a source of inspiration. You might not have to be a muqallid. You don't need to be a follower. You could even differ on certain jurisprudential rulings, perhaps on the concept of wilayatul faqih. You could differ, and this is normal. Last I checked, it was Samahat Ayatollah al-Uzma al-Sayyid Mohammed Rida al-Golpaygani. Some of the youth may not have heard of this name, but for some reason find it very necessary to rush and jump that if you are Team X versus Team Y, then I can never speak to you. Samahat Ayatollah al-Uzma al-Sayyid Mohammed Rida al-Golpaygani, one of the Maraja of Qum, prayed the janazah prayer on the establisher of Wilayatul Faqih, al-Sayyid al-Khomeini. One led the Salat al-Mayyit on the other. One doesn't necessarily embrace the theory of the wilaya of the faqih that the other is being preyed upon. However, this goes to show that I don't need to agree with you 100% to sympathize that what I just saw on the 10th of the holy month of Ramadan was a tragedy against humanity, that I have many things in common. It's not normal. I'm not sure if you checked. Have you checked or not? That our maraji' are slain as such in the holy month of Ramadan. I mean, I even remember that many non-Muslims found this outrageous. James Webb, on the Tucker Carlson podcast, said it very clearly. He said that, do you know what this reminds me of? This is tantamount to slaying the Pope with his grandchildren on Lent. This is a figure who's a source of emulation, the Pope. Killing him with his grandchildren during the holy month of the Christian year, Lent, and you expect them not to be outraged. Therefore, a number of questions rose when it came to killing a marja' in cold blood during the holy month of Ramadan. little bit before Layali al-Qadr that have to concern every single one of us as a Shi'i. Because if it's not your marja', it's also your fellow Shi'i. And if it's not today's marja', it's tomorrow's marja'. This concerns us. Why? Because every single scholar issued statements of condemnation, be it from the scholars of Qum or Najaf and elsewhere. This is something unprecedented. Number one question that arose is, what are the implications of a martyred marja'? We all know of the implications of a marja' that passes away, but how about one that is martyred? A shaheed fi sabilillah. What does that mean in respect to my taqleed? Because many have even asked this question, that I know if a marja' passes away, if I am on his taqleed, I can continue. However, if I am not, I can no longer choose to follow someone that has passed away. However, what about someone who was killed in the way of Islam? Because once we hear ayat that say, don't consider those who died in the way of Allah as dead, rather they're alive. Technically, theologically, is such a person still alive, such that I can now follow them without problem? Interestingly, this was a question that rose. Furthermore, how common is it for us to hear of our scholars being slaughtered? And is this the new norm, or is this the beginning to something bigger, the beginning to something scarier? Because one day it's one alim deen, another day they can demonstrate that on channel 14 of the horrible propaganda news show, they can put a number of scholars with X on their face. One of them is Samahat Ayatollah al-Udma Sayyid Ali Sistani, Hafidhahullah, and may Allah prolong his life, who was very much a voice against the oppression that we've seen today in his circumstance. Little did many people know, when they come and make mockery of our scholars, coming from a place of ignorance, now you understand why many of them may not come out public as such. How come I don't see such person coming out and joining the people? The last time a marja' deen did this, or his whereabouts were very well known, they were immediately targeted. Look at some of the history that we've seen. In 1999, one of the Marja' of Najaf was assassinated in cold blood by the Ba'athist regime. Ayatollah al-Sayyid Mohammed Sadiq al-Sadr Abu Muqtada al-Sadr, killed in cold blood in his car with his two sons. Killed in cold blood. The year before, we had two Marja' that were killed. Why I mention this is because this leads to the implications that we will all understand. Two were killed before, and many of us haven't heard of this. Some might say, but there are other scholars. We're talking about Marja', someone who you put your faith in. Why do they call it taqleed? From the root qiladah. What does that even refer to? Necklace. That I put my Islamic understanding of law, I put it in your hands, like as if you have control of me, like that necklace controls my own neck. I dress up with your worldview, and I just take with what you say, because based on common sense, that the jahil returns to the alim. That's common sense here. We had two scholars. 1998, Samahat Ayatollah al-Sheikh Murtada al-Barojurdi. Sheikh Murtada al-Barojurdi was a scholar. He was killed by the Ba'athist regime in front of his home. He was shot in cold blood. The memoirs record that he was walking back from the Masjid of Amir al-Mu'mineen to his house in the Najaf proper wilaya. Right before he gets to his home to unlock his door, behind him someone says, Sheikh Murtada. As he turns around, they shot him cold blood. His wife was on the other side. Due to her shyness and fear, she couldn't even open the door to see her husband, but she knew he was shot. And her crying continued until some of the mu'mineen came at night and picked up his body that was laid on the ground for multiple hours. Father-in-law, by the way, of a Sayyid Muhammad Rida Sistani. He has a very close affinity to the Marja' of Najaf today, a student of Ayatollah al-Khoei. Never got to see marja'iyya for what it means. A few months only, and then he was slain in cold blood. The second would be killed 2 months later. Al-Mirza, Ayatollah al-Mirza Ali al-Gharawi. Similar situation in his car, and his son-in-law, and his little granddaughter. Some of the most heinous crimes is, I will kill you and I don't care about anything stopping me in the way. Whether it's a baby, whether it's your child, whether it's someone innocent. And that's why you revive Alsheraa every year. Nothing can be comparable. and لا يومك يومك. But we need to remember that the same principles I learned in Ashura must apply today. So I don't become shocked to see how can such a thing happen. It's okay. It happened to the best of them as well. That it's normal to see a leader, a figure of inspiration die, but in the same process, his children die as well. This is normal. It's happened to us before. Sheikh Mirza Ali Gharawi was shot blank in the head, killed by the Ba'athist regime. Before this, we had arguably two Maraja. You can argue. And these were the kings that held from Jabal Amil. Ayatullah, one can call them, but al-Shaheed al-Awwal, Mohammed bin Makki al-Amili. If you've ever studied Hawza, you would have always studied his Al-Lum'a al-Dimashqiyya, his great encyclopedia of Islamic law. You cannot graduate Hawza until you studied it. Put in jail, beheaded. Then his pretty much successor, al-Shaheed al-Thani, Ali, Zayn al-Din bin Ali al-Amili, the Sharih of Al-Lum'a al-Dimashqiyya, beheaded as well. Other than this, from the time of Shaykh al-Kulayni to Saduq, Tusi, Mufid, Sharif al-Rida, Allama, al-Muhaqqiq, others, to al-Mirza Muhammad Hassan al-Shirazi, to al-Shaykh al-Naini, none of them were subject to martyrdom. Today's day, that shift has changed in the last few decades. It's not something you can just wake up and say, it doesn't concern me. Wallah, if it was animals, it would concern the world. But for some reason, we've woken up to a new norm that because it's the blood of a Shi'i in Junub Lebanon, or 180 girls in Minab, Iran, or in Iraq, the blood of a Shi'i is normal to be spilled. That is not the case. Therefore, tonight, we ask a number of questions revolving around how normal is this new implication and how it affects our lives, my dear respected brothers and sisters. The first point we must all understand is when a person, irrespective of an alim, becomes shaheed, we must understand what that term means. The first idea is the term shahada. On the news, you've been hearing it a lot. And guess what? Don't let peace agreement here or a moment of understanding there make you distracted. You're going to hear it more. As so long as there are your modern day Marwan ibn al-Hakams active today. And I will get into Marwan in the end. Marwan ibn al-Hakam is represented today in a form you all know and hopefully hate as well. We understand that the term shaheed represents a few things, but it has been way blown over proportion. Some might say there was an individual that died by car crash, and this person is shaheed now. Not necessarily. Or someone has died falling off a building. I call this individual shaheed now. Not practically. There are two different understandings of the word shaheed, and the term shaheed is a degree that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that is reserved only for Allah's greatest. On the day of Qiyamah, it will be called, where are the shuhada? They must enter first. And there is a room in heaven reserved only for them, and their top leader in their room is Sayyid al-Shuhada himself. Hence why he is called Sayyid al-Shuhada. That there's a space only for them. Their leader is Imam al-Hussein. He's with them in Jannah. Man ahabba amala qawmin hushira ma'ahum. Whoever loves the actions of other people, you will be resurrected with them. How about instead of just loving the actions, you do the action as well? What happens to you on Yawm al-Qiyamah? The term shaheed, you must divide it in two parts. There is an understanding in a Islamic law perspective, and there is an understanding in a social perspective. Both are appropriate to accept, but only one is true shahada according to the traditions, like the shahada of those who are slain in the way of Allah. For example, the genuine shaheed who dies in the way of Allah can only happen if they followed the order of the Imam of their time. And as a result, they died in the way of Allah Azza wa Jal. The Shuhada of Badr, they followed the messenger, the Hujjah, at their time. When they died, they said to Allah, I died following your Hujjah's words. They died a shaheed. Or the Na'ib of the Imam of their time. So it's not only the Imam. It could be whoever the Imam placed as their representative. If you followed the representative of the Imam of your time and you died in the order of following, you die shaheed as well. In which context? Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, when he finally assumed public khilafah, he sent many representatives throughout the Muslim world. One of them was Malik al-Ashtar, and he dispatched him to Egypt. Malik al-Ashtar, on his way to Egypt, upon arriving, began to administer law and order. Some of those who would follow the teachings of Malik died in the process. Died in the process, they died shaheed. Not because Malik al-Ashtar is a what? Ma'soom, but because he's a representative of a ma'soom. These, what are the implications? Number one, how many of you have attended funeral processions here? You know the steps are very intricate. That there must be a ghusl of the mayyit. There must be what? Takfeen as well. There must be what? Salat al-mayyit. There must be what? Talqeen of the mayyit. That when you bury them, you also recite to them, اسمع افهم هل أنت على العهد الذي فارقناك عليه بأن لا إله إلا الله. This, انتبهوا, you're going to hear it one day. Either now or when they put you down. May Allah give you all long lives in the khidmah of Ahl al-Bayt. But this is something that is obligated to be said. And buried facing the Qibla. And so on and so forth. The shaheed doesn't get any of this. Some might say, is this not a dishonor that they don't get a burial? They don't get a... No, they get. But not like you. Number one, the shaheed gets buried with their blood. And with their armor they were wearing. Rasulullah in the day of Badr told the Muslimin, the few that died from us, that were killed, make sure you bury them on the spot they fell. It doesn't mean it's wajib to not take them somewhere. You can, but you are better off putting them where they fell. Let their place where they died turn into a maqam. And don't do a ghusl, they're tahir. They're pure. I believe that the mayyit, the dead, is najis if I touch them, not the shaheed. That's a different individual. They get buried with their clothing wherever they fall in the state they are. One hadith tells us the reason why. It's because that on Yawm al-Qiyamah they will be resurrected exactly in that state, and they will complain to Allah about who was responsible for making them in this way. With their blood and with their clothing, with their armor and with their sword. The shuhada is not a status anyone reaches. Why are they called that? We'll get into. There's a second description of shaheed. We call that a shaheed al-i'tibari. The one who socially can be referred to that. This is anyone who didn't resist the dhulm of society and died trying. And ahadith tell us these are shuhada, but not the same status of the shuhada that fall in the way of Allah. وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Not like that. Like what? A mother who dies giving childbirth, Rasulullah said, she dies a shaheeda. Someone who dies being burnt. What a painful death. Die shaheed. A wall collapsing on someone and they die as a result. Die shaheed. Someone drowning. Die shaheed. Someone taking their children to school but getting into an accident. La samahullah. That process, they died doing amar bil ma'roof. They died spreading ilm. Die shaheed. In the opposite, dying doing nahi anil munkar. You see someone getting abused or you see injustice, you're going to stop it. On your way, something happens. You die shaheed. It depends what? On the state you die on. Some ask, then what's the point? If this is shaheed and that's shaheed, shahada is easy. Not exactly. This, you get the reward of shahada, but your maqam is not that of the shaheed on Yawm al-Qiyamah. You get the reward, and that's necessary. They say, what if I don't die like this? Yani, I never was fortunate to find a bad situation of injustice and I have to go stop it. Then in that case, I'll try to not actually fix it. I'll try to struggle so I die in the process. Isn't this a cheat code to get shahada? Let them hit you a couple times so you could die in the process. First of all, you can't fool Allah Azza wa Jal. There are no loopholes. You can't trick God. Second of all, it doesn't even need to be the case that you find yourself in a predicament. La. So long as the hadith says by Rasulullah, Ala man mata ala حب آل محمد مات شهيدا. اللهم صل على محمد. Whoever dies with the love of Muhammad and Al Muhammad dies a shaheed. Let that last moment of your life be you testifying, أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمدا رسول الله وأن علي ولي الله. And if not that, the hadith by Rasulullah, من مات على حب. Did you love them as you passed on? Shaheed. Automatically. Given that. طيب, what am I given? This thing people keep talking about. Shaheed. Dying on the way of God. What does that even mean? It can mean many things. There is one common meaning though, given all the tafasir. The first is something to do with life. Life. The shaheed from the root shahada or yashhad. They saw, they noticed something. And you can't see and notice unless you're living. What does this indicate? Some ulama said that a person is called shaheed if they die in the way of God because they saw their taklif. They saw their obligation and they went to fulfill it. They died in the process, shaheed. They saw their obligation. Number two, Allah Azza wa Jal gives them the opportunity to see their place in Jannah. In this dunya, before the akhirah, just before they die. And a karama for the shaheed, meaning a gift for that individual, is that Allah doesn't allow them to feel the pain of death. They may look like they've suffered. How many of you have seen people suffering? And it really breaks the heart. Whether it's footage coming out of Palestine, Junub Lebanon, Iran, wherever it may be. Moments before they leave this world, what appears to be suffering, pain. And it really hurts you. I don't know about you, I haven't gotten much sleep. Ever since 180 schoolgirls were blown up in one instance. One of the mothers says, she's like, I bid him farewell, my beloved son. And I said, goodbye, I'll see you soon. Do your homework, pay attention. And he never returned to me. The mom still says, I still go to the class hoping to find him there. Some of you might have daughters, some of you might have sons. Did that moment come across as a painful moment to you? It did. But what about to them? As a karam for the shaheed, Allah prevents them by taking their soul moments before they get killed, as a degree of blessing for them. And on top of that, one narration mentions that they see their place in Jannah. They become so infatuated with their home in Jannah that they cannot feel any pain at that moment. Sometimes, have you been in a state where you're bizarrely distracted, such that you begin to lose senses? Did this happen, by the way, in world history at one point? Those women who were invited by the Queen of Egypt when she brought forth Nabi Yusuf. They were too busy staring at Yusuf, distracted, such that while they were peeling, using knives, the fruit, the apples, the oranges, they were ordered, everyone go ahead and start peeling and ripping up these fruits. They began to cut themselves. You always think and ask yourself, did they not feel knives going over? When you're that distracted, sometimes you don't notice something going on that severe. Yeah, it can happen. That the shaheed sees their place in Jannah, and it's so infatuating that they don't even have a sense of what's going on to them, and they leave this dunya comfortable. That's one opinion. Another is, la, they're alive, they've never died. They've died physically. But we, last I checked, we're Muslims. Last I checked, death is not an end. Death continues. Death is where dunya stops, but akhirah begins. Last I checked, we move on. We live. وَإِنَّ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ لَهِيَ الْحَيَوَانِ. It's real hayat. If this dunya is part hayat, then الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ being real hayat means I'm double living. That they are genuinely alive. The ayah gives you this explanation. وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ. Do not perceive. تحسب, حساب. Don't perceive and cast judgment upon the one who was killed in the way of Allah as dead. Bel, rather they are alive, but what makes them living? Bel أحياء عند ربهم. One of the names of Allah is Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum, the living, the fully alive. If someone is with their Lord, the one who is full life, full, complete, absolute hayat, Allah Azza wa Jal, that person never dies. Why? How can I die when I'm plugged into ultimate, absolute hayat? 24/7. How can I ever leave if I'm connected to a source constantly giving me life? وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Why? أَمْوَاتٌ بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ. What does the end of this verse say? يُرْزَقُونَ. Receiving rizq. What is rizq in this context? One tafsir says, rizq, if you're with your Lord and you're alive, what more do you want? When we say, Allah yurizqak, Allah ya'tiq rizq, Allah yuwassak alayk, we're just talking about flus. Money. Money is the rizq. But Allah says there's more rizq, and there's more to rizq than just money. Someone who's died can't take the money with them. Someone who's died doesn't even care about their money anymore. They're alive getting sustenance. One opinion came and said that the shaheed gets rizq from their Lord by being allowed to see their life and to see this dunya after they left. Someone who's left this dunya is still blessed to be able to see their family and loved ones. One of the biggest wishes of a person is when they leave their family for just a day or two, they cannot stand not hearing news about them. Now imagine you leave for eternity. One of the biggest forms of commodity is, I don't want anything, Ya Rab. Don't give me a palace. I don't care about this. I don't want a river of milk and honey. I just want to know, are my children okay? I ignore all this. Just give me news of my kids. Think of billionaires today who have everything in this dunya, but they're constantly going through family troubles, family problems. They would sell all they had to just give them some peace of mind. Ya Rab, thank you for the Jannah. Give me peace of mind. True rizq is giving them that ability to see their family. You're going to see it, inshallah. Allah yaktub lana wa lakum jannatul firdaus, inshallah ta'ala. But the thing that will give you more peace of mind is my mom doing good. I left before her, and she would always depend on me. Ya Abba, is she struggling? My wife, my kids, a member of your family that dependent on you. Ya Allah, are they in good state? Are they fine? Ya Allah, I know you're giving me palaces, servants, the ability to see and have. Jannah says, فِيهِ مَا تَشْتَهِ الْأَنفُسِ, as the Quran says. It has everything you desire. Ya Allah, I really want, just give me that. It seems to be the case, only the shaheed gets that. Yeah, it's irritating a bit. Ya Allah, some people get and I don't get. Then what's the difference between someone who gave their life for Allah and someone who lived their life for Allah? There's a difference. Living your life for Allah, giving your life for Allah. There's a huge difference. Ya Allah, I could have lived further, but I said, Ya Rab, there was a bigger purpose to this dunya. That if I can die, I can give one thing. But if I can die whereby you're pleased, then I will give you that. That might mean I leave soon. That might mean that I will go through difficult times, but it's okay if it gives you satisfaction. The famous poet ascribes to Imam al-Hussein, إن كان دين محمد لم يستقم إلا بقتلي فيا سيوف خذيني. If the religion of Rasulullah Muhammad cannot be sustained unless I am killed, swords take me, because that's more valuable than my own nafs. Do you know what Imam al-Hussein could have done? Imam al-Hussein just had to do one thing: recognize the legitimacy of Yazid bin Muawiyah. Do you know what our Marja could have done? Recognize the legitimacy of the hegemonic, barbaric, power-hungry elites. And suddenly it would stop. And they even said, why can they never capitulate? How come they never bend? We've struggled with them. We've choked them. What's happening? You know what we can try doing? Let's kill their head. Let's go after what? The head of the pyramid. There's a problem. This works. Intabihu ya ikhwani. This works on everyone else, just not with the Shia. Why? Why? The idea is this. If you go for their leader, everyone else will be dismantled. It'll collapse. I agree with you. I agree that works. It worked when Adolf Hitler killed himself, the Nazi party all dismantled. It worked when Mussolini was trialed and ended, then that regime collapsed. It can work when you go after the head of a group. Alexander the Great had a beautiful kingdom. That's why they called him the Great. From Macedonia all the way to the far east of Afghanistan. Then once he dies, his kingdom is divided. He had rulers and followers, they would die. But there's a difference when the head dies. Everything gets dismantled. That can happen. In fact, that's only been the common norm. Why is it the case they go after our Marja? Because they think that's the same thing. It's not possible with us. How come? Because you made a deadly mistake. That our Marja, our Marja, whether you follow one or not, have some ghira for your Marja. Are you team Shia or no? If you're not team Shia, it's not that you're a team different form of a Shia. It's not that. It's you're either team Shia or team Salafi, Wahhabi, bloodthirsty, Epstein partying Zionists. Because last I checked, it's bloodthirsty. I'm not done yet. Listen. Bloodthirsty, child trafficking, devil worshipping, Epstein partying, genocide enabling, members and elites killing Shia. Who else is killing Shia? Who? Shia? It's Shia being victims and on the receiving end of what? Say it again. Bloodthirsty. Who? Child trafficking, Epstein partying, genocide enabling, demoralizing, God empty elites. Going after Tashayyu'. It gives you a good indication who has the truth. Why this didn't work with us. When you killed a Marja in 1999. Or when you killed a Shaheed al-Awwal. Or a Shaheed al-Thani. And let's not forget a Shaheed, a Sayyid Mohammed Baqir al-Sadr. Or when you killed a Mirza Ali Gharawi. Or Sheikh Murtada Barajurdi in front of his own wife and she couldn't do anything about it. Or when you kill Samahat Ayatullah Sayyid Ali al-Khamenei with his granddaughter in front of him and his daughter-in-law and his son-in-law and his daughter and his son. Don't forget that he was never, and none of our Maraja were ever, by the way, on the top of the pyramid. There was always someone on top. We have an Imam. And the Imam protects this house. They said this to Abdul Muttalib when Abraha wanted to demolish Mecca. He approached him and he said, I give you one request. Just please fulfill this. Abraha said, what? You're going to beg? You're going to capitulate? You're going to accept my terms now? You're going to recognize my legitimacy? It's all that it takes, by the way. One recognition of legitimacy, one bay'ah, we would spare you of all this. With the biggest insult, Abdul Muttalib says, my camels and sheep, give those back to me. He says, you take me to be someone mad? Your camels and sheep, that's why we meet now? I thought you were going to care about your Kaaba. He says, no. You misunderstood. I'm not at the helm. I'm not the tip of the pyramid. That's not me. It's not the Kaaba. Destroy it. Have fun. First of all, God will protect his house. I am the Lord of these camels and sheep and livestock. وَلِلْبَيْتِ, you know this line, رَبٌّ يَحْمِي. And for the house, Allah has a Lord. Allah is the Lord, rather, to protect it. The house has a Lord that will protect it. I am the Lord of these camels and things like that. If I made myself the Lord, then yes, killing me dismantles everything. But there's someone above me. Why it doesn't work with us? Why it can work with Alexander? Why it can work with a Nazi moment where one leader dies, everything collapses? Why it works with these riffraffs and not with us is because you made a mistake. There was someone above our Maraja. Sahib al-Asri wal-Zaman, Ajrullahu ta'ala farajul sharif. The day you try going after him and see him succumb to your whims, then we can talk about why when you go after the top and our leaders, everything else gets dismantled. It doesn't mean this still hurts, or this doesn't hurt. This hurt badly. This was heavy. This was painful. And some of our shabab take a mockery sometimes. Yeah, it's okay, it's whatever. Hani'an. It's not hani'an. It's not that. Do you know the kind of blood we've lost? Do you know the new norm that's been opened up today? This hasn't happened before in Tashayyu' history. But you know what gives us all motivation? Do you know what gives them all solitude? Do you know what allows us to continue and persist? Is that if this happens to you, and your granddaughters, and your children, and your women, and your men, and your companions, and you lose everyone, Salihun ba'da Salih, it's okay. There was a man 1,400 years ago who, when he lost everything, he said, being compelled to recognize the legitimacy of that dirty man. By the way, what's Yazid? Genocide enabling. Doesn't care if children are killed. Do you see that or no? Doesn't care if children are killed. What is Yazid if not partying? If Yazid was alive, he would go to that damn island. What is Yazid if not drinking? What is Yazid if not what Imam Hussein says? Fasiqun fajr. These are terms, if you use them to anyone, you would say, shway, relax. Those are bad terms. Not when an Imam Ma'soom says them. They become the right terms. And al-Walid ibn Utbah, Yazid's representative in Medina, calls Aba Abdullah to court. He says to him, look, al-Walid ibn Utbah, in the Maqatil literature, Abi Mikhnaf's Maqtal, and the Tarikh al-Tabari mention, was slightly hesitant about Imam al-Hussein. He says to him, Ya Hussein ibn Ali, Inna Amir al-Mu'mineen Yazid ibn Muawiyah da'aka ila bay'atihi, فماذا تصنع? O Hussein, Yazid, the Amir of the Mu'mineen, has called you for his allegiance. What will you decide now? Imam al-Hussein says something rather fascinating. He says, you gather me in a secret night meeting. This is not a moment for allegiance. Come and call me tomorrow. Imam Hussein diverts it. He says, you gather me to give a bay'ah secretly at night? What kind of bay'ah is this? What does the Imam mean here? He says, you're giving me special exemption. I have to see you at night to give him allegiance? Call me tomorrow. It's the Imam saying, I have an announcement to give. I'm going to give you a response. I have a response for you, but I want everyone to see it. If I give a response to Yazid's request of bay'ah, it's just you and Marwan that riffraff will see it. Who cares? No. Tomorrow. As Imam al-Hussein leaves, it's night. As he leaves, Marwan ibn al-Hakam looks at al-Walid ibn Utbah, Yazid's representative in Medina. He says, awayhak. If you let him leave now, he's not going to come back tomorrow. Funny thing is, Walid says, you don't know who this man is. When he says something, he fulfills it. There are people today, when they say something, they might half fulfill it. Even with your enemy, try fulfilling it. Even with your enemy. Trust me, if he says he's coming tomorrow. Marwan says, but the problem with this is a man. If you don't get his allegiance tomorrow, then you must kill him. Why? Because his allegiance, he not recognizing our legitimacy. Muawiyah just died. Yazid assumed khilafah. If he doesn't recognize his legitimacy, no one will follow his order ever. Meaning Yazid. Because Al-Hussein is critical. If you don't have his approval, everyone's approval is nonsensical. Al-Hussein needs to approve. If he's not going to approve, he's better dead. What does he have to do? Ya Ammi, just capitulate. Just give in. Just do some taqiyya mode and be like, yeah, okay, I agree. Bay'atuka fillah, end of story, move on. Not the Shia of Ahlul Bayt. We would rather give ourselves than to scum of the earth like Yazid bin Muawiyah. Aba Abdullah comes tomorrow. Marwan ibn al-Hakam and Walid bin Utbah are sitting in their majlis. And they gather aristocrats because Imam Hussein invited. And he said, tomorrow, not in private, public, not in night. And Imam al-Hussein looks at him and he says, نحن أهل بيت النبوة ومحل الملائكة ومحبط الوحي بنا فتح الله. That we are the family of the Ahl Bayt of the Holy Prophet. And we are the area where Malaika come down. It's in our house Jibreel came down. Who except us did Kisa get revealed for? It's in our house Malaika come down. It's through us Allah opens doors of rahmah for you people. And then he says, وَيَزِيد, and Yazid, رَجُلٌ, the next word is critical, fasiq. He is a corrupt man. Sharibun, what makes him corrupt? Trust me, if this is in your life in any capacity, which it's not, because you're a follower of Sayyid al-Shuhada, but stay away from someone who even has this capacity. It's not worth it. Sharibun lil khamri. Fasiq, why? لأنه شارب للخمر. قاتل النفس المحترمة. killer of all souls that are sanctified. Yani before Karbala, he's killing people riffraff. Womanizing. Distant from God as far as he could be. And he continues to list the crimes of Yazid until he says, Mul'inun bin dhanb, that Yazid publicizes his sins. Imam Hussein says, why I despise him is sometimes you can sin. Habibi, don't share it online. You're going out to party, enjoy. Don't share it online. Don't let others see. You're a Shi'i. We gave too much in this dunya. We gave too much for this heritage, such that now we say, I'm Shi'i and watch me violate Allah's laws in this dunya. You're better than that, Habibi. You're much greater than that. Don't publicly sin. Imam Hussein says, I hate him because he publicly sins. And here I am normalizing public sinning with my nasty, disgusting music. I don't mind sharing online. It's as easy as that. It's as easy as that. Liking and following very distant people from Islam, you feel the rest in. You're better than that, ya akhi. Wallahi al-azim. And my dear sister, much greater than doing anything like that, publicizing your sin. You have a sin, keep it between you and Allah Azza wa Jal. Imam Hussein says, I hate him. Why? Mul'inun bin dhanbi. He publicizes his dhanb and then he says a line. Wallah, this line is a line that is you today. This is a line that shows us why we lose Marja in cold blood, but why, while it hurts us, it makes us proud. He says, this is you today. Always look at the next problem you have, the next temptation you got, the next confrontation between al-haq wal-batil. He then says in front of the mada, وَمِثْلِي لَا يُبَايِعُ مِثْلَهُ. And a man like me never gives allegiance to a man like him. And then Abu Abdullah throws his aba as such and walks outside, and Abu al-Fadl behind him as such. At that point, Marwan ibn al-Hakam looks at al-Walid. He says, you have to kill him now. Al-Walid sends letters to Yazid and he says, his head or his hand. He stopped giving his hand, then it's his head now in this case. Brothers and sisters, as Imam al-Hussein leaves Medina al-Munawwara, Abu Abdullah alayhi salam, he decides to head to the grave of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Get to that point, brothers and sisters, O mu'mineen, that you find yourself in a situation where you say, I could have bent, I could have submitted, I could have given up, but I decided to stay firm on the path of truth. It could take just one recognition, not one peace agreement. No, it's not that. It takes the one call of saying, I accept you for who you are. I legitimize you. But guess what? That's them. That's not you. That's not you who says, Hayhat minna dhillah. When the world was in shambles and burning, when other Muslims were busy building high rises, and when other self-proclaimed lovers of truth and humanitarian nonsense, this doesn't exist anymore. This doesn't exist anymore. There is only one group who has to keep saving the day. There's only one group who has to keep coming back. There's only one group who keeps saying, never and hayhat min dhillah. Because if we recognize you, we've then embraced dhillah, brothers and sisters. And that's why the most beautiful thing ever is when you compare a shaheed to the alim. As much as we love our shuhada, we would never have a single one if it wasn't for that alim who graduated from Najaf and Qum. And I put it in those exact two words. That's the hawza. Al-Hawzatul Ilmiya. If it wasn't for that, and we will come on this in one of the following nights, on how we Shia managed to endure. If it wasn't for these sha'air, these symbols of Allah, our maraja al-'idham, we yes would have perished. And some Shia, yeah, they might have capitulated, they might have given up. There are some happy of what's happening because they disagree with a worldview. Shamtan, ala an qumtin qusuf. Shamtan, that we were this close to losing everything we had from our scholarly heritage. This close. But don't forget, lil bayti rabbun yuhmi, that you call yourself a Shi'i. It doesn't mean that you have to embrace 100% of another man's worldview. It doesn't mean that. Ya akhi, doesn't mean you have to even do taqleed. Be akhbari nonsense, that new age thing that's coming up. Be whatever the heck you want to be. Have some hurra in your life. If you're not going to be Muslims, فَكُونُوا أَحْرَارًا فِي دُنْيَاكُمْ. Be a free human being. Free meaning don't be a slave to some systems out there. Use your aql. Akhi, non-Muslims are waking up. Non-Muslims who were very far right, extreme nonsense, whatever that means, are saying, what did we just do? We supported a group that kills 180 girls in school. Is that you now? Is that you when you wake up and said, I never liked certain individuals? That Marja never matched my opinion. You don't even know how to write your name in Arabic, and you're talking about Marja? Riffraff. Some people, wallahi al-azim, it gets to you because it's sad state of affairs. The World Cup is happening. And you get people who accept, their teams. Even if they fail, they'll support their team. For once in your life, support Team Shia. Support Team Shia the same way you supported Team Iraq. Wallahi al-azim, it's okay. That doesn't mean you have to agree with your fellow Shi'i, with the way they do sha'a'ir, with the way they have a worldview, with their methodology on how they live their life. It doesn't mean you have to accept that. But that's your Shi'i. If you're not Team Shi'i, what are you? It's not Team half Shi'i. It's you're either Team Shi'i or you're Team bloodthirsty, genocide enabling. What else did we say? Child trafficking, genocide enabling. We'll keep repeating that one. Epstein partying. It's just that. Be part of Team Shi'i. Team Shi'i, what does it mean? That if you see a member of your side fall, lift them up. Even though you don't like them on a little level, on a social level, on a communal level, on a degree where that's one Husseiniya I will never go to. La, those are my Shia brothers and sisters. That's that Husseiniya, Husainiyat X, Husainiyat Y. They like to commemorate Yawm al-Ashir like, that's not you. You're better than that. You don't mind supporting your own teams these days. Even if they fail, you say, Wallah, they made us proud anyways. Then your fellow Shi'i should make you prouder. At a time where all it took is saying, you know what? The majority are going after us. Let me join the majority. Never. Because that's humiliation. And Imam as-Sadiq said it very clear. As much as we love our shuhada, it's the ulama that came out of these two worlds, Najaf and Qum. And I will tell you today, don't let any young person or old person or someone who looks like they know what they're talking about. The reality is this, be hur, don't be baraf. Tell you that these are two different houses. They're one hawza. They're one hawza. Qum and Najaf graduated two of the greatest ulama that have ever existed. From Sayyid al-Khoi to Al-Alama Tabatabai. Alama Tabatabai, you associate him with Qum, he graduated from Najaf al-Ashraf. Sayyid Ali al-Qadi, Irfan, the biggest fear many of these younger men have these days. That it's a new science, graduated from Najaf. Many of our Maraja, Sayyid al-Khoi also came from the world of Qum, but you associate him with Najaf. It's all the same Hawza, brothers and sisters. Let's not separate our people together. We're all on one team. We'll all stick together and we'll all unite together. And that's why Imam as-Sadiq says that إِذَا كَانَ يَوْمُ الْقِيَامَةِ جَمَعَ اللَّهُ النَّاسِ فِي صَعِيدٍ وَاحِدٍ ووضعت الموازين فتوزن أو توزن مداد العلماء على دماء الشهداء فيرجح دماء مداد العلماء على دماء الشهداء. That when the day of judgment comes, look at his words. Allah will gather all man and womankind on one playing field. And then he will bring out, apparently the hadith says, the scales. The scales, there's more than one. Allah is going to weigh a lot of things on that day. Your a'mal, your intentions, all that is going to be weighed. One of the things that will be weighed on Yawm al-Qiyamah is what? The ink of the ulama and the blood of the shuhada. فَيَرْجَحُ مِدَادُ الْعُلَمَاءِ عَلَى دِمَاءِ الشُّهَدَاءِ. And then you will notice, man and womankind, Allah wants to make this clear, that you see the ink of the scholar, how the scale dips further and is heavier than the blood of the shaheed. Why is that? Because the shaheed would not have been shaheed if it wasn't for the alim. If it wasn't for him saying, rise. If it wasn't for him saying, now. If it wasn't for him saying, you have full tawakkul, I give you permission. And what about if our alim and the blood of the shaheed are one? That when you have an alim deen become shaheed. What are the implications of that? How heavy is that scale? How heavy is that mizan? It's wrong to say. I've heard this come up. Let's just put an end to this. That because an alim marja' deen dies as a shaheed, And because we have ayat that say, don't consider those who have died as shuhada, as dead. Rather, they're alive. That means he's still alive. Whatever alim deen that has left us from the ulama of the past and the present, that you could start doing their taqleed now. La ya habibi. This can't happen. They are shaheed. They are alive. They are witnessing their taklif. But Allah's system moves on. Allah carries this. And this is not the end. This won't be the end. This won't be the end of us. Because when you think you go after the top of our pyramid and every one of us is beneath that pyramid, our leaders leave us, it's not the case. Our leaders have a leader above them. They follow their guidelines. And don't be surprised, and I say this confidently, wallah, I say this confidently, that our maraji' themselves, in many instances, they await the orders of Sahib al-Asri wa zaman before making any critical decision. Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-sharif. I remember Sayyid Muhammad Hassan al-Shirazi, the tobacco revolution maker, in the 1870s. His student, Sayyid Muhammad Hussein al-Fisharaki, said, can I speak to you in a term outside of student and teacher? He says, please speak to me in whatever term you like. He said to him, do you not fear God? Imagine a student saying that to their teacher. Do you not fear God? أَلَا تَتَقِ اللَّهِ? He says, why? He says, you know what you have to do. It's a fatwa you have to write. The British hegemony has monopolized the businesses in Persia, and specifically the tobacco businesses. If you issue a fatwa saying it's haram to support and you have to boycott and make smoking haram, then you will allow the Shia economic relief. Why don't you do this? Do you not fear God? The Sayyid replied, he says, this is such a critical fatwa. It's not just something I can just write. I await Sahib al-Zaman to grab my hand as I write it to know this is something Allah accepts. A few days later, he would go into his room and he would come out holding the statement. I wrote it. This is not something far-fetched. After the Ma'soom, it's the ulama that come afterwards, because the Ma'soom put them. أما الحوادث الواقعة فارجعوا فيها إلى روات حديثنا فإنهم حجتي عليكم وأنا حجة الله. Marwan says to Al-Walid, why don't you go and kill him now? Walid then says, I can't. Al-Hussein is not someone I can just kill like any other person you think. Al-Walid ibn Utbah, the funny thing with him is that he's being instigated by a third-party actor called Marwan ibn al-Hakam. This Marwan lives every single day, by the way. You get close to making deals, truths, you get close to making progress, there's a third nonsense that comes out of nowhere and says, no, I will sabotage. It's on my terms. But we're making progress. No, I will send us something and I will kill lives and I will not allow peace to be sustained. Marwan ibn al-Hakam, Aisha even narrates. She says, Ya Marwan, Wallah, I used to hear Rasulullah in his qanut, do la'na upon you and your dad before وَأَنْتَ فِي صُلْبِ أَبِيكَ. That Rasulullah would do la'na on you while you were still in your father. You were still in his loins, and before you're in the womb of your mother, Rasulullah said, there is going to be a kid from this riffraff al-Hakam. He's going to be called Marwan. I'm doing la'na on him from now. Before you were even born. Aisha narrates that. And you know what this Marwan is? In the Battle of Jamal, do you know what he did? Marwan. Oh, Marwan's on the Battle of Jamal shooting arrows this way and shooting arrows that way. Shooting arrows on one side and shooting arrows on the other side. He loves fitna. That's why Allah says, وَالْفِتْنَةُ أَشَدُّ مِنَ الْقَتْلِ. Fitna, corruption, spreading such tyranny, just nonsensically when people are making progress. Fitna is worse than if you just killed people. It means you stop progress. You prevent it from proceeding. Marwan says to Walid, oh, he has to die now. Put a bounty on his head. Aba Abdullah has to leave Medina. You found that he was stuck in a situation. We had made it very clear. وَمِثْلِ لَا يُبَايُعُ مِثْلَ سَيِّدِ الْأَحْرَارِ understands that now it's time for him to leave. Before he sets out, Aba Abdullah goes and he begins to speak to a few members of his family. One hadith tells us. He talks to Muhammad, his brother, half-brother, Ibn al-Hanafiyyah. One hadith says, Ya Muhammad, you have to stay. If all the men of Banu Hashim die, then we will be no more. Some of you have to stay. He tells al-Banin, stay behind. "Oh, my mother-in-law, my father's wife, stay behind." He tells a number of his own siblings, "You can stay." He tells Sayyida Zainab's husband, Abdullah ibn Ja'far al-Tayyar, "Stay behind." And then he says, "I'm taking a few with me." And as he decides to collect himself and his family, بِأَبِي هُوَ وَأُمِّي, he sees that they've begun a propaganda campaign. وَالْحُسَيْنِ ibn Ali خَرَجَ عَنْ دِينِ جَدَّ فَيُقْتَلْ بِسَيْفِ جَدَّ. That Aba Abdullah has left the deen of his grandfather Rasulullah. Al-Hussein is a murtad? Hasha. Al-Hussein leaves this deen, then there's no mu'min if Al-Hussein leaves this deen. إن الحسين خرج عن دين جدة فيقتل بسيف جدة. Aba Abdullah sees this happen and he decides to collect his family and he sets off from Medina to go to Hajj in Mecca. Before he sets off, he says goodbye to a few members of his family. The first he says bye to is al-Bani, bidding his father's very loyal wife, al-Banin Fatima, farewell. And he says to her, Ummah, he still calls her by mother, by the way. "I tell you only to watch after my daughter." Al-Alila, Shaykh al-Mufid mentions Imam al-Hussein had this daughter. Her name is Fatima. She is too young and she is small and sick. And it's not going to be easy for her to travel. And so, Ya Ummah, stay and watch after her if it's not too much burden. Aba Abdullah goes to the home of Sayyida al-Mu'mineen Salamah, a surviving wife of Rasulullah, upright lover of Ahlul Bayt. And he goes to her and he says, "O mother of the Mu'mineen and wife of the Holy Messenger, I bid you farewell." And then he goes one after the other, and after this he sees there's only one more I have to say farewell to. And that's none other than my grandfather Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Ahlul Bayt loved Medina, and it was never easy to leave Medina al-Munawwara. Aba Abdullah alayhi salam goes to the grave of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa bi abi huwa wa ummi. As Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam approaches the grave of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, he turns to the qabr of Nabiullah Muhammad in the middle of the night, in the disguise of the darkness of the night. As he approaches the grave of Rasulullah, he begins to say the following line: Allahumma hadha qabru nabiyyik, وهذا وأنا ابن بنت نبيك وقد حضرني من الأمر ما قد علمت. اللهم إني أحب المعروف وأنكر المنكر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل Muhammad. Imam al-Hussein begins to say, "Oh Allah, this is the grave of your Prophet, and I am the only surviving son of the daughter of your Prophet. And you, Ya Rasulullah, are aware of what has now befallen me. Indeed, I love doing good and I hate the evil that happens. O Allah, send your blessings upon Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. And I ask you, Ya Allah, on behalf of this grave," he's doing tawassul with the grave of Rasulullah, "to ensure that whatever happens to me in my journey is within your satisfaction. هي لك رضا ولي فيها رسول الله رضا صلى الله عليه وآله." At that moment, Imam al-Hussein continues to speak to the qabr of Rasulullah, knowing this would be his last time, ever seeing the grave of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alih. Sooner than later, Imam al-Hussein enters a short sleep next to the qabr of Muhammad. The hadith tells us Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam saw in his dream the beloved messenger of God extending his hands as such, saying to him, Assalamu alayka ya Jadda, Assalamu alayka ya Habib Allah, Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah. Oh Rasulullah, you know very well what has befallen me and my family, and you know very well what will happen to the rest of us if we proceed. He says to him, Ya Rasulullah, take me with you. Ya Rasulullah, this dunya has turned against me. Ya Rasulullah, I don't desire to stay anymore. Rasulullah then replies to Imam al-Hussein. He says to him, Bunay Hussein, this is not your time to return to me. Bunay Hussein, you will meet me again soon, but you have to first go to the land known as Karb wa Bala. You must then first do this step before you enter the abode where I will see you. Bunay Hussein, before we meet, your tents will be set on fire. Oh my son, Ya Hussein, before I see you, your women will be taken captive. Ya Habibi, Ya Hussein, it's like I see you drenched in your own blood. Ya Habibi, Ya Hussein, it's like I see you with your head placed on the spear. Ya Habibi, Ya Hussein, it's only a few moments and we will unite. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. العلي العظيم. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين.